There's just no reasonable way to create a zoo large enough to match the actual outdoors. San Diego Safari Park definitely is one of the better zoos. I think if I had to be a captive animal, I'd probably want to go there, but if you asked me if I wanted to be a captive animal, I'd definitely say no.
I'm your king. Well, I didn't vote for you. You don't vote for kings.
Okay, episode 1, take 2 of King for a Day. And today we have Nolan Bumpus from Nolan Bumpus fame and fortune.
Hello.
Full disclosure, Nolan is my nephew, and he's my first guest too. And maybe someday we can talk him into being co-host.
Yeah. I can give a little bit of background on myself if that's helpful. I'm more prepared than I was for take 1. Okay. I'm Nolan Bumpus. I'm about to graduate with a Bachelor's of Science in Zoology. Previously, I spent a few months as a chimpanzee care intern for Project Chimps, a non-profit sanctuary. Yeah, it was all retired research chimps just living out the rest of their days. I plan to work in conservation or at another sanctuary, especially for primates, but really any animal would be good. And probably in the more near future, to teach life sciences to grades 6 through 12. And hopefully through that, I can educate some children about animal welfare as well.
Awesome. You've been surrounded by animals for all of your...
I've had a lot of pets throughout my life, a lot of dogs and cats and chickens and bunnies and you name it.
It's always busy at the Bumpus house.
Oh, yeah.
So, in a nutshell, if you, Nolan Bumpus, could be the supreme ruler of any particular country or city or town or business or charity, and you could make or strike down one law or rule, what would it be and why? What would be the benefit? What might be the knock-on effects? How will it be so undeniably beneficial for society that your successors will be compelled to continue with it?
All right. So, unsurprisingly, my King for a Day law, my decision, has a lot to do with animals and animal welfare.
Yep.
I don't know, I guess, I don't know what I'd be the king of the world, I guess, but I would outlaw zoos, or I would pass laws to just really drastically, fundamentally change the way we run zoos. I think a lot of people now are becoming a lot more aware of how terrible captivity is for most animals and how zoos especially just lack the resources, especially for larger animals, to provide them with what they need. And so more and more people are kind of boycotting zoos or thinking more about how they engage with zoos with their kids. And so I think that this probably would be a pretty well received law, at least by some, but we can talk more about that as we get into it.
Yeah, it can be heart-wrenching to see the conditions. I'm sure not all zoos are equal in their,
Yeah, definitely.
conditions, but back in maybe I want to say like 2003 or so, we were in Nagoya had a zoo. The conditions there were just not good. Yeah, especially the elephants were just in this like really kind of scorched earth looking cell
Yeah.
with not a ton
Yeah.
of room to move around, and they just looked. It's who knows what a happy animal looks like, but this just didn't look like that.
Yeah, unfortunately for one of the largest and most emotionally intelligent animals in zoos, their conditions are often some of the worst for their needs, at least. They're really don't have what they need. And most of, if you look at what ailments elephants in captivity come down with, 90% or more are about where they're actually housed. Often it's just foot injuries from walking on things like concrete all day long.
We were just watching a video about horseshoeing, and I guess I didn't realize that if you don't maintain their hooves, they grow out this long, kind of curling hoof. It's like, I guess
Yeah.
it's the same. Is it keratin that makes your
Yeah.
fingernails?
So
Is that?
similarly, it would just grow out.
Yeah, I don't know if that's because of breeding or that they've always been that way, but they just wear it down naturally when they're not, you know,
Yeah,
kept
I'm not a
as,
hundred.
as
I'm not 100%, but I would guess that it probably is still mostly the case in the wild as well. They just wear them down naturally, similar to like claws in cats or teeth in rodents. In captivity, they just have less chances to wear those down. That's another thing is some zoos, like you said, there's a lot of variation in quality. So there definitely are better zoos than others, and a big thing is gonna be care and maintenance care and stuff like that, and knowing what needs to be done for different animals, which animals probably shouldn't be washed, which animals should have a chance to be washed, stuff like that. On the topic of varying quality of zoos, one zoo that I know we talked about in the first take of this podcast was was the San Diego Safari Park,
yeah.
which definitely is one of the better zoos. I think if I had to be a captive animal, I'd probably want to go there, but if you asked me if I wanted to be a captive animal, I'd definitely say no.
Yeah, right.
But the safari park has about 1,800 acres, and that's kind of their
Wow.
big selling point is that they have a lot of room for these animals to roam, which sounds like a lot because it is a lot. But but then when you look at the ranges of a lot of the animals that are
Right.
kept in there, like a single rhino's territory is up to 15 square kilometers, which is like double the safari park, which is like 7.2 square kilometers. And giraffes, they travel in groups, but they'll travel around a territory anywhere from 85 square kilometers to 1,500 square kilometers, so a lot
Wow,
more
that's a
than
spread.
yeah. So it's definitely better than what a lot of captive animals have access to, but really there's just no reasonable way to create a zoo large enough to match the actual outdoors.
So, where do you come down on? So, I feel like the stated mission of many zoos is they are bringing in species that are, in many cases, at risk of extinction, and that they're actually doing a service by providing a sanctuary and ensuring the species carries on.
I definitely think there is some truth to that, which is a big reason I don't think that we can just erase zoos. We kind of need to replace zoos, because outside of just conserving species by keeping them in captivity, they also just generate so much of the funds that goes towards conservation is generated by tickets to zoos, admissions fees, and people donating because they hear about charity opportunities at zoos, and the wildlife education zoos provide is really important. For the actual conservation itself, I know that oftentimes it's not as successful in zoos as you might think, because animals kind of that are raised in captivity really can
don't
only
thrive.
exist in captivity. Yeah, if you try to re-release them or start sort of your own gene pool, it's just really hard to. You'd have to start like a whole survival retraining program often to give them those skills that they need. But there is definitely some benefit to the detailed records zoos are able to keep on the genetics and the breeding history of the animals that they have. And like I said before, all the conservation funds and just the interest that they drum up is definitely huge. So
It would seem like the sheer size of the animals, has got to play into it in some amount too. Because what is the range of an ant compared to an elephant? You know.
yeah,
Or actually, I saw this exhibit at I think it was at Central Park in New York. They had a spiders exhibit that was pretty neat. And I'm no expert on the ranges or of habitats of spiders, but it would seem like you could provide a fairly decent existence to them relative to like a tiger or something.
yeah, I definitely with smallies, small animals and insects and all sorts of other critters. I have less background than I do with larger animals, but I definitely think that would be something worth looking into is what animals can be reasonably housed. But yeah, the majority of the animals that draw people to zoos, we actually I learned they're often called within zoology charismatic megafauna. The giant things that people want to come see, lions, tigers, and bears.
Right.
um,
The rock
are
stars.
really yeah, they draw all the attention, but they're also the hardest to provide with what they need. So definitely I think that's an avenue, and looking into just sort of pushing local wildlife to the forefront and almost just creating a reserve or a small protected park that showcases animals that already live there, to have a pond and keep the fish healthy and birds will come by, and that way you'll have a bit of a wildlife exhibit. It's not the same as a zoo. I mean, we kind of already have these things just with well-kept parks, but they're few and far between already, unfortunately.
Can you point to any examples and any real life examples? We talked about San Diego Safari Park, but are there any other similar examples of like trying to either revise the definition of a zoo or maybe just completely blow it away and start over?
That's an interesting. I haven't found many examples that are really advertised as somewhere for the public to visit other than, like a national park or something like that, something that's just open natural area. But I don't think I've seen anything that's advertised sort of as an alternative to a zoo that does the same thing. I guess the closest thing I can think of right now might be the Herring Run near Bridgewater, where
Okay.
it's just a area that's pretty well kept, or at least was. There might be less. I haven't been there in a long time. I don't know how it's doing now. But these herring have sort of a man-made structure for them to migrate through.
Is this
But-
down on the Taunton River?
Yeah, I believe so. I have to double check that. But
For our listeners, Taunton River is a river in our hometown of Bridgewater, Massachusetts. And herring run, there was a herring run in an old wooden dam that actually failed probably 15 or 20 years ago. But that's not the herring run you're referring to, because you wouldn't be old enough to remember that.
yeah, no, I don't think that's the one. It's in Middleborough, actually. That's where it is. And I'm trying to see which river cuts into. It's an unobtrusive thing that just provides people with an easy spot to come and see them when it's time for them to migrate. And they'll pass right through there, and this park for people to visit.
And herring run is actually, I think, a colloquialism for a fish ladder. Am I correct?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I've never heard it called a herring run anywhere but in Massachusetts.
Yes, that might be a colloquial local thing. My idea, I guess, to jump into that, since I haven't seen this alternative anywhere to my knowledge, maybe I'll be corrected when this gets posted. Sort of it markets itself as a zoo or like a zoo, an alternative, but rather than housing actual live animals, it would either have animatronics and robotic animals and amusement park style rides to just draw an interest, get money that can also go to conservation, and also just get people to be engaged and interested in wildlife without having to coop them up. And
Yep.
if you want to go even more zero waste and not have all these animatronics that might one day be rotting away in a warehouse, you could
Yeah.
go for like a virtual experience with either again rides that have animals on those sort of hidden screens. I don't know if the amusement parks now are using often screens that are placed in a way to make it look like you're traveling through a physical space, or
I,
virtual reality,
I'd
or just
never,
videos.
yeah, I'd never seen anything like that in a zoo context, but I did go on the Avatar Disney ride.
Yeah, yes. So something like that, take that, or the Jurassic Park, not from the films with real dinosaurs, but at Universal, they have a whole. You can visit a fake Jurassic Park full of animatronic dinosaurs. Take that, or the Jungle Cruise from Disneyland. Spiffy it up a little bit, make it a bit more educational and not just for entertainment. And that's kind of my idea in a nutshell, is just a edutainment wildlife center without living wildlife.
Yeah, and you could have Jeff Goldblum as the tour guide. It would be tickets would sell like hotcakes. I'd go.
Yep.
You sent me a clip of some animatronic stuff, and I was blown away by like how incredibly realistic. Like if you had not told me that that was animatronics, I would not have batted an eye.
Yeah, yeah. So the clip you're referring to is a robotic dolphin that was built as part of an effort to just get marine mammals out of captivity, because they are one group of animals that in particular really suffers, because again they have high emotional intelligence and emotional needs, and really up until very recently we either didn't understand those needs or we willfully ignored them.
I thought maybe it was the set designers from Jaws trying to redeem themselves 40 years later. Because I love Jaws, but I gotta admit that one scene where it's just like on the deck of the ship and this jaws are flapping away was a bit laughable.
Yeah, nowadays for sure. I think the author of the book also actually years later made a statement saying that they regret how much animosity towards sharks they kind of created with Jaws.
Right. Oh, that's another whole rabbit hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when you really look at the stats, the danger sharks pose to humans is really not very high compared to many other animals and just natural dangers. It's sort of what happened with with wolves, where a lot of people just have a bad reputation, and I'm sure there was some conflict with humans. But now you'll see with wolves, a lot of people who live in areas like near Yellowstone will kill them because they are worried they'll kill their livestock, when really, comparatively, I think few livestock deaths are really wolves. And even if that was the case, I think it's better. It'd be better to have a system in place where you could be reimbursed for the livestock you lose to a wolf, because the benefit that they've provided in Yellowstone is really worth
Probably,
it. Right?
yeah. They're an apex predator, aren't they?
Yeah, and they really affect it's a whole downstream cascade where I forget exactly what the cascade was, but there's something where the
Probably
wolves.
just deer control, right?
Yeah, exactly. The wolves controlled the deer populations, but I think to such an extent that they sort of reshaped the river because the deer weren't eating away so much vegetation, and it slowed down the erosion.
Wow. So you're talking some serious macro stuff here.
Yeah, it really has big effects. So it looks like the creators of that robotic dolphin are actually some entrepreneurs from New Zealand, where you are now.
Well, representing. You can tell by my accent, right?
I can't find the name of Roger Holtzberg, who used to work for Walt Disney, working with Walt Conti, who worked on Free Willy and Flipper, so maybe he's looking for some redemption. They're both working on those animatronic dolphins to replace marine mammals in captivity. But yeah, like you said, when I first saw that video, I was waiting. I was like, oh, when are they going to show the robot dolphin? And then I was like, oh, that is the robot dolphin.
It's totally. I was godsmacked by that. Yeah.
So that's very impressive.
Seriously, the Disney ride, the Avatar ride, just blew me away. Because, like, part of me thinks, oh, who's going to go see a bunch of robots? But, like, people line up freaking 3-hour queues to go ride a fake animatronic pterodactyl that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, that's my hope, is that there would be more interest in it. I mean, there definitely would be some backlash, because a lot of people, the argument you often hear is, if there weren't zoos, then only the uber wealthy could travel to go see these many animals in their natural habitats. But
and usually they just go to shoot them.
Unfortunately, that's true. And that's actually leads into another interesting thing I learned, which is that big game hunting actually provides a large part of conservation funds. They'll sell...
I heard this. Yeah, it's kind of a dichotomy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very tough situation, because there's a high price to legally hunt a few endangered animals, and then all that money goes towards conservation. So the people who are hunting them often have this view that, you know, they care more about these animals than somebody who just talks the talk, because yeah, they might shoot them, but they also spent all the money to shoot them.
It's just, there's a cringe factor to it that you don't even know where to start. It kind of reminds me, I literally was just reading this Saudi project to build this. It's just a linear city that's one long mirror across the desert. And
yeah, I heard about that.
And it's supposed to be the ultra uber sustainable, green, eco-friendly, throw in all the buzzwords you
want. Yeah.
But it's paid for by oil wealth. So, you know, how uber green and sustainable does it have to be to cancel out burning fossil fuels impact?
Yeah, that is definitely a tough one. It is similar, because personally, for me, I think the moral contradiction of saying you're saving species by killing one for $1 million is kind of too much for me. And I think often it is also behind this mass of faux naturalism. You'll often hear people say, well, I'm engaging with the circle of life, and it's this really emotional, tender moment that brings you into their world, but really...
and then I pull the trigger.
I think if that's really what you're looking for, go out with a camera and track and sleep outside and do what you like, but why in the end do you have to... I think the moment you shoot them with a gun is the moment that any natural cycle has been broken.
Yeah. But, I mean, on the other hand, man, the human species has long been an omnivore species that we're here because of that,
Yes, yeah. There's definitely a lot of mental gymnastics often at play.
Mental gymnastics, good term.
But that is definitely, though, unfortunately, another area where if you outlaw that, which I would like to, you unfortunately have to find some other way to get that money, because it is a large source of conservation funding. So,
but then there's other forms that are just pure BS, like the Japanese whaling fleet. That there's a UN resolution from way back, probably 30, 40 years ago, that banned hunting, but the Japanese continue to hunt under the guise of research, and research still keeps showing up on sushi menus all across the country. So,
research is a very tricky side of animal welfare as well, because, as I said near the beginning, the sanctuary I worked at was all former research chimps who, when in 2015 they banned medical research on primates, that was they had 200 plus chimpanzees in the U.S. with no ability to be re-released into the wild and nowhere to really go. So they are kind of just still waiting around in labs, some of them, to just find a sanctuary to be sent off to. But
what is that? Is that the norm or the exception? Are they typically euthanized at the end of the research?
So I guess it depends. I'm not sure. It would definitely depend on what the research is for. I know sometimes that, as long as they live, the research can continue, so they will keep an animal alive for its entire natural life. But certainly there are a lot of animals that are either euthanized because their usefulness is gone, or sacrificed as part of the research. So much research involves, looking at something's brain or organs, and thankfully vivisection is frowned upon, but because of that, many animals are killed just so we can take a look inside.
Right. Well, I know for sure in Parkinson's research, the chimpanzees are often induced with gene-altering, I don't know if it's a virus. I think it's a virus. But anyways, it induces Parkinson's-like symptoms. This is necessary, I assume, to develop the drugs. But surely those animals... It's got to be more humane to euthanize than to let them live out the rest of their lives, in that state.
Yeah. So that's where research...
Maybe I should be euthanized too at the end of my usefulness.
This is where research opens up so many tricky moral questions and dilemmas.
Was that often a topic of conversation among your colleagues there?
Surprisingly, no. I had one class where we did talk about it a bit, but in most of my STEM courses, my biology courses, it was so normal to just talk about how, oh, we took a frog's eye out and flipped it upside down and put it back in, and now the frog sees upside down after the retina reattaches. Or we gave these mice, we edited this gene, and now they can't walk without stumbling around, and we painted their feet to get a picture of their gait now that they have no motor control or balance. Like you said, it's tough because there are definitely cases where it seems like you want a good model of the disease to study, but at the same time, there are some things that just seem so unnecessary. And an interesting point about that is there are ethics boards that review experiments before they allow you to run them on animals. For some animals, especially mice and rats, they kind of just have no qualms. As if you have a mice or a rat and not something closer to a human, really anything goes. It's pretty horrific to hear about sometimes.
So it's just assumed that that's the way it's going to be, and like, is there any discussion among your peers of trying to change it, or are you kind of alone? So
Most
far?
people, yeah, I would say, if I spoke with other zoology students, they usually come more from a place of interest in animals for themselves, and there seemed to be a lot more care for animal welfare and what their actual experience was. Whereas when I spoke to the more pure science types who, are looking more for the medicinal uses of animal research, they're
Yeah.
really, it's almost like you just kind of have to close your mind to it and not think about it too much. And there's almost like a just a resolve to say, well, it's important, so I'm not going to think about it. And we need to do
Well,
this, so.
is there like a UN committee or panel on this, or I mean, I know there's PETA, but I think they're just like a nonprofit or something.
So the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, IACUC, is a committee that basically is federally mandated to oversee like any animal experiment or research. So that's who I was alluding to as reviewing experiments before they are okayed. I'm not 100% on this, but I'm pretty sure that they have sort of a clause outlining what they see as objectionable, and they say you can't do this, you can't do that to these animals, so on and so forth. And then when it comes to mice and rats, it's just except mice and rats. You can do anything to mice and rats. Is basically their position at the moment. And definitely that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it a lot more flies than with almost any other animal you would pick.
Poor Ratatouille. And we need more rat movies. Is the problem?
Yeah.
You got to find a way to the heartstrings.
Yeah, they're vilified. My girlfriend had 6 rats for a time as pets, and
You don't even want to know.
I got to see the softer side of rats, the sweeter side.
Your cousin Rick would feed them to his snake on a weekly, daily basis.
Yep. Yes, 2 of her pet rats were going to be feeder rats. So they were housed in basically a big bucket until their time had come, but I guess they were rescued.
Yeah, I suppose that's another whole rabbit hole. I don't want to stretch this out too long, but if you if you go down that road, I assume most animals in the zoo are being fed animal products, other animal products.
Yes.
And where does that go? How do you draw a fence around that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely tricky. And, it's easy to say, well, it's only natural, because many animals are obligate carnivores and they have to eat some kind of meat. So to
Circle of
drop a
life.
goat in there or whatever. But I think it's there. To me, there is a large difference between not intervening and letting nature take its course and choosing livestock to be drop fed to a tiger. And also for the predator's sake, often the way they are fed doesn't mimic hunting, and so they don't get the enrichment and exercise that they would get usually when they're kind of baby fed whatever animal it is that they will eat.
I can't help thinking that someday we're going to be under this same ethical microscope by the singularity. What do we do with these silly humans? Like, it's kind of mean to just feed them to the machine for our fusion reactor to power our servers, but
Yeah, but I mean, I think you have a legitimate point there where often with questions of animal welfare and ethics, I try to think about if an alien came and they were hyper intelligent and saw us basically as animals, how would we want them to treat us? And I think the answer is usually to be left alone, not
yeah, probably probably a little better than the way we're treating our furry friends.
yeah.
Well,
Um,
this is cool. Any other wisdom you want to impart, or maybe links you want to make people aware of?
I think that about exhausts what I came prepared to say, but for links, definitely we could link that video of those robotic dolphins. That was really
Yes.
something amazing to see. And also Project Chimps.
Yes.
There's many other chimpanzee sanctuaries that are up and running right now. Chimp Eden.
Yeah.
Those are a couple more chimp sanctuaries I can plug real quick. And yeah,
And I'll post them up. And
awesome.
thanks, Nolan.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to you later.
Yep.